You know, some stories aren't really about history. They're memories. They're these incredible echoes of a world that is completely, utterly vanished, told by the one person who could bridge the gap between what was and what came after. Today we're diving into the royal commentaries, which is it's this heartbreaking love letter to the lost Inca Empire, written from a perspective that is just totally unique.
Right off the bat, you hear these words from our author, Garcilaso de la Vega. And you can tell, this isn't the voice of some detached historian, right? This is a man who was just haunted by this deep personal sorrow, a man living under the shadow of a crime he says he never even committed.
So what was this crime? Well, it was his very existence. He was a living, breathing paradox, the walking embodiment of a collision between two massive civilizations. And really, it's this internal conflict, this impossible identity, that is the heart of the entire story we're going to explore.
Okay, so who was this man, standing right at the crossroads of history? Let's get to know Garcilaso de la Vega. He was born in the Inca capital of Cusco, way back in 1539. The ashes of the conquest were still warm. And his very blood carried the story of two powerful and totally opposing worlds.
Just try to wrap your head around this impossible position. On one side, through his mother, he was Inca royalty. We're talking a direct descendant of emperors who were seen as children of the sun god himself. But on the other side, his father was a Spanish conquistador captain, one of the very men who shattered that divine empire. Can you even imagine carrying that profound contradiction inside of you every single day of your life?
So, publicly, in the light of day, he was being shaped by the conquerors. He was getting the full education of a Spanish gentleman, right there in Cusco. He was learning Latin, he was studying Aristotelian philosophy, Christian theology, the entire intellectual world of the culture that had just subjugated his mother's people. He was being molded, piece by piece, to fit into this new Spanish world.
But then, in the evenings, everything changed. He'd sit with his mother's relatives, the Inca nobles who had somehow survived the conquest. And there, he got a completely different kind of education. This wasn't from books. This was from voices, from memories. They would tell him these incredible stories of the empire as it was, a world of unbelievable grandeur and order that was so quickly fading into myth.
And you see, this wasn't just casual storytelling. This was an inheritance. His relatives saw something in this young boy. They saw a vessel, someone who could carry their memories forward. He was basically given this sacred duty. Listen, remember, and preserve these stories in your heart before they're just lost to the wind forever.
And of all the incredible memories that were entrusted to him, none, and I mean none, shone brighter than those of the Cora Concha, the very heart of the Inca cosmos. So through Garcilaso's words, we're not just looking at some ruins that now sit under a Catholic church. No, we are about to step back in time and see it as it truly was, the legendary Temple of the Sun.
He basically lets us peel back the centuries and witness the breathtaking, almost blinding splendor of this place. He paints a picture so vivid, it honestly feels less like reading history and more like stepping right into a forgotten dream.
Okay, so picture this. You're walking towards this sacred place. The first thing you'd notice is the stonework. It's so perfect, so masterfully fitted, you couldn't even slip a knife blade between the blocks. And then your eyes would drift upwards to a massive band of pure gold, 3 feet wide, that encircled the entire top of the temple, just blazing in that high Andean sun. Even the doors weren't made of wood. They were solid panels of gleaming gold.
And if you think the outside was amazing, just wait. Inside, the walls were literally papered with sheets of gold. At the eastern end, facing the rising sun, was this massive golden disc representing their god, the sun. Garcilaso tells us it was this huge round face with rays and flames shooting out of it. It was so massive and brilliant, it probably would have blinded you.
But the Cora Concha wasn't just some building. Garcilaso explains it was like a miniature model of the entire Inca universe. And nowhere was that clearer than in its sacred garden. Now listen, this was not a garden of living things. No, this was a garden forged from precious metal. Just try to imagine this. Every single plant, every blade of grass, every ear of corn with its little silver silks, every llama, every tiny insect crawling on a leaf, all of it was perfectly recreated in solid gold and silver by the empire's best artists. It was a testament to a level of wealth and spiritual devotion that is, well, it's frankly almost impossible for us to comprehend today.
And this golden world, this center of the universe, was about to be completely obliterated. The shift from this dreamlike splendor to a brutal, violent reality was just shockingly fast. The world Garcilaso's relatives talked about with so much love and nostalgia, it didn't just fade away, it collapsed, with a speed that felt like some dark prophecy finally coming to pass. So according to the Inca accounts that Garcilaso preserved, the end was actually foretold in the sky. The emperor at the time, Huayna Capac, was deeply troubled by an omen he saw: 3 distinct colored rings encircling the moon. He knew it was a message from the heavens, and its meaning was absolutely terrifying.
Each ring foretold a different stage of their apocalypse. The first ring was blood red. It predicted a devastating civil war between his own sons, and tragically that's exactly what happened. The second was a stark, menacing black, prophesying the end of their religion, their culture, their entire civilization. And the final ring, it was a hazy, indistinct band of smoke. It meant that everything they had built, the gold, the people, the empire itself, would simply vanish, as if it had never even been there.
And just look how fast it all happened. Francisco Pizarro and his tiny band of conquistadors show up in 1532, and they find an empire already torn apart by that prophesied civil war. Within just a few months, they had captured the emperor, Atahualpa. And then, less than a year after they first arrived, he was executed. Gone. The tragedy was so profound that even some of the conquerors felt its weight. This quote, it just shows the moral crisis at the heart of the conquest. You have a Spanish soldier warning his own leaders that executing the Inca emperor, especially after he'd paid them a king's ransom, was an inhuman action that would stain their reputation forever.
But those protests were ignored. Atahualpa was killed, the sacred line of the sun gods was broken, and the prophecy, well, it was fulfilled. The empire, which had stood for centuries, just unraveled. It vanished, just like that ring of smoke had foretold.
Which, of course, brings us right back to our author, Garcilaso. He was born into the ruins of this catastrophe. He was a living symbol of its aftermath. So what do you do? What do you do when the world of your ancestors has been turned to dust? And this brings us to this really fundamental question, doesn't it? When does a civilization truly die? Is it when its temples are knocked down and its rulers are killed? Or does it only die when the last person who remembers it is gone? This question right here became the central struggle of Garcilaso's entire life. He couldn't rebuild the Golden Temple. He couldn't restore the royal bloodline. But what he could do was fight against oblivion itself. He could make sure the Incas were remembered for who they were, not just for how they fell. And so, he wrote. His book, The Royal Commentaries, is his act of defiance. It's a kingdom he built, not of stone and gold, but of ink and paper. It's a bridge that he constructed between his 2 warring halves, trying to explain his mother's world to his father's, and in doing so, preserving it for all of us.
I mean, this one sentence just perfectly captures his entire life, doesn't it? He learned Latin, the language of the classical European world, his father's world, right in the middle of the chaos and violence that was destroying his mother's. He was a scholar who was forged in the crucible of conquest, a man whose whole existence was defined by that violent, impossible intersection.
And really, that's the heart of Garcilaso's legacy. His struggle, even though it was born of a specific time and place, is, well, it's universal. Every culture, every family, every single one of us has memories that we're terrified of losing. So his life's work really leaves us with this one profound question. If your world was vanishing, what is the one story you would fight to save from the smoke?